The Moray Coast Trail doesn't actually start on the coast, but in the centre of Forres, from where there's a rather tedious road walk, well, at least I found it tedious, to Findhorn. I would suggest that unless, as I was, you're determined to do the whole of the Moray Way on foot, you get the bus to Findhorn and skip this fairly short section. Once you get to Findhorn, everything improves. You've got beautiful Findhorn Bay, the sea appears. Findhorn itself is a nice little old fishing village with pubs and a cafe if you want to stop for a short snack or a drink. And you are actually now at the seaside. And the walk from here improves immeasurably. If you do walk the road, as I did, it starts to improve once you've been through the little village of Kinloss and Findhorn Bay starts to open up on the left, and you get a sense of being again away from the farmland and the noisy roads, though the road into Findhorn is pretty busy itself, but at least now you're sort of back in somewhere that feels at least semi-wild. Once I reached Findhorn Bay, the wind caught me, a strong wind that was going to accompany me all the way along the Moray Coast Trail and make recording audio rather difficult. However, it was still beautiful to be there, and the bay itself looked wonderful, and Findhorn village was as attractive as ever. The next 7 miles of the walk are right round this bay to Berg Head, which you can see in the distance. The trail itself is mostly in the dunes and forest, but I shall walk on the beach as much as possible. And this is swinging round to look at Findhorn Beach. All along the coast here there are the remains of wartime defences, one of which has provided me with shelter from the wind so I can record this. It is a very windy day. You can see the coast I'm walking along here. The tide is out, so I am on the beach rather than up in the dunes, and it is lovely to have the sound of the sea instead of the roar of traffic. And my plan is to camp somewhere in the pine woods over there, not very far from Berg Head, where I'll be tomorrow morning. But for now, I'm enjoying being at the seaside. I'm up in the woods now, and the sea is below me. The cliffs here are all sand, which you might think is safe, but as this warning notice says, they can collapse. I wonder how long those trees along the edge are going to be. The path goes off into the woods that way. This is a ruin in Roseisle Forest called Millie's Bothy, once used by fishermen. And if we swing round over the gorse and the pines, and there is the sea back round over more dunes and back to the pines. This is a forest that was built to stabilise the sand dunes. It's a mix of Corsican pine and Scots pine, and of course it's never felled, as that would defeat the purpose. Back round to the bothy, so there is a fair amount of natural understory here, and it's probably far more biodiverse than commercial plantations. And I grew up with woods like this far away on the coast of Lancashire at Formby, where there are Corsican pine trees, and they were planted, yes, to stabilise the sand dunes. So somehow this feels very familiar, even though I've never actually been here before. Anyway, on to find somewhere to camp. Camp 2 is a very functional camp in the depths of Rosal Forest, which is all around me, and I'm quite well hidden. I don't think anyone is going to disturb me, and I'm not that far, a couple of miles I think, from Birkhead, and I am out of the wind, which is still blowing hard. I can see the treetops moving up there, and I can hear it. The sea is not far away in that direction. I'll go and have a look at it again tomorrow. But now to settle in for I hope a good night's sleep. Approaching Birkhead along the coast after a night in the pines. This is the start of my 4th day, and it's still quite breezy but a little warmer, and there's a panorama around the coast and the dunes and pines. The view from Birkhead looking back to now seemingly far distant Findhorn across Birkhead Bay and swinging round over the sea, and then across Birkhead itself to Lossiemouth, where I'm heading along the coast. The Birkhead Pictish fort with neatly mown grass and flower covered ramparts and lots of picnic tables. Probably wasn't like this when the Picts were here, but interesting all the same. The coast just beyond Hopeman, with the cliffs coming into view, the path climbs over the top of those. You can see it going up on the right here. This looks to be the most exciting bit of the coast trail. The coast walk here was by far my favourite part of the whole walk. Very impressive, very beautiful. I loved it. But the wind was also at its most ferocious here, and trying to record video proved completely impossible. So here's some still photos of this absolutely wonderful stretch of coast. Leaving a quiet Lossiemouth. This is the town here, and round to the sea. And now a walk along the sand below these dunes, and those woods far ahead there is where I'm hoping to camp tonight, having left Lossiemouth by this nice bridge, pedestrian bridge. Anyway, I've now got 7 miles to Garmouth, and that is the end of the Moray Coast Trail section of the Moray Trail. So sometime tomorrow I will be saying farewell to the sea. Camp 3, a pleasant spot in a cleared area of the forest that's now regenerating. This is Lossie Forest. I'm a bit over halfway between Lossiemouth and Kingston, and at Kingston I leave the coast. I'd say a pleasant spot out in the open a bit, unlike the night before when I was deep in the forest. And the bright yellow of gorse. But most curious of all, as you can see the line of over there, is some of the World War II tank traps are now in the forest rather than on the beach, and I've been sitting in the tent looking at them. As on the 2 previous camps, I did not bother closing the door at night. The tent was really only there just to keep everything organised and in case of a shower, as it's still cloudy and the clouds are still moving fast, though there are bits of blue sky. Yesterday afternoon there was a shower of rain, which again was just enough to make me think putting the tent up was worthwhile. Otherwise I could have just slept out. There's been a very, very light breeze, but not one that would be enough to disturb sleep. Anyway, it's now time to pack up camp and get moving along the last section of the coast, and then turn inland and pick up the Speyside Way. as well as the tank traps and some quite big pillboxes, there are even bigger lookout stations which are up on the sand dunes, so you get a view out to sea. And come inside, and decorated the walls, some impressive ones in places as well. Some of these artists have got a fair amount of skill. Others are of the simplistic Jamie was here type, but from the edge of the lookout you can see the sea. But this is where they would sit and watch for any ships coming in over the water. And of course, in those days, these huge shingle banks that you can see above the tank traps weren't there. That has been the sea building its own defences. And this way, you're looking back along the trail, which is actually out of sight of the sea here, all the way to Lossiemouth, which is several miles away now, and back round to the lookout station. There's another one further along. But now on to Garmouth. Heading into Garmouth now. So this is one of my last views of the sea. As at Garmouth, I turn inland and start heading over there. Until December 2025, the Moray Way continued over the River Spey on the Spey Viaduct, an old railway bridge. However, that has collapsed, and now walkers are faced with 3 miles of road to the nearest other bridge over the Spey, which is at Fochabers. So once I left the coast at Garmouth, I had to take the road to reach the Speyside Way. The third and final part of this look at my walk on the Moray Way will cover the section on the Speyside Way from Fochabers back to Grantown-on-Spey.